Okay, right. Good evening. So this is Rahul Reddy. I'm from CL Bangalore, and I'm a mentor who had taken the Clat 24 paper today. Let me take you through the English section here. Right? So English was a pleasant surprise in terms of how easy it was. Sometimes you wonder, you actually wonder whether it's a school reading comprehension where all the answers are right there in the passage. I think probably the last passage in my book, which is one of the passages, required a little bit of thinking. Two were very straightforward. One possibly, a few seconds of thought for each question. Let's quickly run through them. We start with the first passage, questions 1 to 6. Uh, so you'll see this entire passage is only one particular concept. We're talking about a particular person who is staying in a mountain house. And that's exactly what she wants, right? She wants to be alone. She she doesn't want anybody to disturb her. Anything else that happens or comes would be an intrusion or distraction. Even a postman who was actually going somewhere else, she saw as a distraction, right? So, and she also liked it as a barren thing. She wanted to be one with nature in that sense. Right? Now, let's take a look at the questions. Right? What does the protagonist's preference for barrenness and starkness suggest about her personality? Right? Now, look at how easily the answers are eliminatable. She enjoys a bustling and vibrant environment. If that was true, why would she come to this remote and desolate place? She values simplicity and minimalism. That looks pretty much correct. She prefers lush and colorful landscapes, which is not what I mean. Stark and barren is the exact opposite of lush and colorful. She seeks constant stimulation and variety. Again, easy to eliminate. Therefore, B has to be the answer. What do you get to know about the protagonist's state of mind from a reaction to the postman? Right? Again, you should be able to get this because everything that comes, anything that changes, anything that happens is a distraction for her or an intrusion, and it's unwelcome, right? So, unwelcome intrusion or distraction. This she tried to convey to the plodding postman with a cold and piercing stare from the height of the range, right? So, fundamentally, she didn't want the postman to disturb her. So, grateful for presence and assistance. There's no assistance, he doesn't want the presence, right? She dislikes any disturbance or interruption. This is perfectly correct. She feels suspicious and interested in the life of others. She doesn't really care. Okay, she has no interest in the postman except that postman should not disturb her. She is disinterested and generally unaffected by the presence of others. Disinterested, probably, but unaffected, no. She actually gets affected. She feels that it is an unwelcome disruption, which is why, by elimination, B again is the answer that we're going to go for. What does the protagonist desire to be mistaken for a pine tree reveal about her mindset? Okay, it's like this: to be a tree, no more or no less, was all she was prepared. Right? She fancied she could merge with the pine trees or be mistaken for one. Again, it doesn't matter if you don't really understand the exact intention behind this. Look at the choices. She desires to be appreciated and noticed by others. The same point. Every question is based on the same point. She doesn't want to be disturbed. Okay, so A is wrong. She has a deep admiration for beauty of pine trees, out of scope. She finds a sense of superiority over other living beings, out of scope. She yearns to be one with nature and escape from a human entity. This is by elimination the only thing that left. I would not pick D as an answer, as a pick me answer, but I clearly know that A and B and C are clearly not the answer. They go against the essence of the passage. Moving on. This is a strange question, right? The protagonist's description of nestling screams as shrill and maddening show that. You actually go and search in the passage, this isn't there, right? So most likely it's a mistake from the paper setter part. So they would have taken this passage from a book, and in that book, if you take a longer, if you go into the extension of this passage, that is where this particular description would have been there. But doesn't matter. This is exactly the thing. Don't worry. If it is not there in the passage, what do? Look at the answer choices, right? Why would she describe nestling's screams as shrill and maddening? Because she doesn't want to be disturbed. The same thing again and again. right? So she perceives the sounds to be out of tune yet soothing. Shrill and maddening cannot be soothing, right? She considered the nestlings to be symbols of new life and vitality. Hardly. Then that's so positive. Shrill and maddening is negative. Vexatious, irritating, perfectly fits with shrill and maddening. So C is the answer. Protectiveness and care is absolutely out of scope. So if you see, all the questions so far has been on only that one concept. This lady wants to stay in a remote, desolate area and not be disturbed. That's the only concept. And all the questions are based on that. Okay. Which of the following is true about the protagonist's overall state of mind? Right? Sense of constant restlessness, anguish. Remember, state of mind in that place. Right? This was a quiet place, and quietness is what she wanted. Right? So clearly there is no restlessness and anguish. She felt isolated and disconnected, not really. She wants to be part of nature. She was content, fulfilled, at peace. Statement 3 is correct. If statement 3 is correct, anyway, A and C are gone, right? So between B and C, since isolated, disconnected is not the correct answer, we go with D. What role does nature play in her life? Right? It offers her peace and a sense of belonging. Nowhere does it say that she is inspired by nature or does something creative. Right? Harsh realities of life, again, out of scope. Constant source of distraction, intrusion, no, not this place. This place doesn't have much of distraction or intrusion. This is again absolute sitters, right? I mean, I'd be shocked by how easy these questions are. Right? Basically, again, one concept. This entire passage is only one concept. Basically, in literature, there is an interplay between character and setting. The setting is very important. Setting is not just a backdrop. Setting actually influences the way the plot progresses and the character develops. That one point, which is given in the first paragraph, that's it. Everything else is examples. Everything else is examples. Okay, so how is the relationship between character and setting? Right, it is non-existent. Ha. Immediate, you eliminate. Characters and setting are interchangeable. How can a character become a setting and setting become a character? No, setting are insignificant. So A, B, and D, straightforward elimination. It is a complex interplay where setting and influences the plot and character development, directly given in the first paragraph. Right, straightforward B. Now, rest is all. In the namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri. Perfect, proper noun. Go and find it. Right? What does the barren expanse signify? Sense of isolation felt by the protagonist. And identity crisis. Exact, word to word. So, which is option B. Right? What role do Scottish Moors in Shakespeare's Macbeth? Again, direct. Shakespeare, Macbeth. Eerie, foreboding settings of the Moors, dark shadow on characters' action, mist, mystery, ever-present omen of impending tragedy. Ever-present omen of impending tragedy. It's not even synonyms. They've taken it word for word. So C is a straightforward. Beautiful, serene is opposite. No influence, goes against the passage itself. Place for characters to relax, again, doesn't make any sense. So it has to be C. Very, very direct. What does the term interplay mean? This is contextual vocab. Okay, so again, pretty straightforward. So a complex relationship where setting influences the narrative, right? Lack of interaction and interaction between A and B, one has to be correct, right? And as per the passage, clearly there is a relationship between setting and the narrative. Narrative, nothing but the plot. You could possibly say, okay, significant connection between character and setting, but we are saying that B is a much better answer than C. A and D are very straightforward to eliminate. You would look at B and C. Between B and C, B is a much better answer. Which of the following best describes the setting in God of Small Things? Again, very straightforward. Arundhati Roy, God of Small Things. Lush, vibrant Kerala. That setting becomes a character which is important to the fabric of the story. Again, lush and vibrant. They're not even asking you to interpret. It's a very, very straightforward word to word again. What is the main theme discussed in the passage, right? What is the main theme? Same thing that the first question was about, that there is a interplay between character and setting. Setting helps move the plot forward. The setting also helps us understand the character and the development of character. Okay, so characters are not influenced, goes exactly against the passage. Setting in literature is unimportant, exactly against this main point. Settings can be as influential as characters in shaping the narrative. Settings have no role. So clearly, A, B, and D eliminated. C has to be the. So very, very straightforward. But remember, when it is straightforward, you have to do two things. One, get them right. Don't make silly mistakes. And second, make sure that you save time. Save time and use it. You could have used the time in logic or legal. Had you done, let's say, the 4 passages of English in something like 15 minutes, and you had originally planned for 25, that's almost 8 to 10 minutes that you save, which would have been very useful either in critical reasoning or logical reasoning or legal or quant. Okay, going to the third passage, slightly longer passage, but again, look at it. What are we talking about? English literature is vast and diverse field which has left an indelible mark on the world of letters. Right? So effectively, this line is key. English literature offers a window into human experience. Right? After that, it's all examples. One concept, all examples. Examples of Shakespeare, examples of Jane Austen, examples of the romantic poets like Wordsworth, examples of Virginia Woolf, examples of modern novels. Everything are examples, right? And the good thing about examples, you don't have to worry too much about examples because they are all illustrating the same concept. And any question related to examples, you can go and find it in the passage in 5 to 10 seconds. Who is regarded as the greatest playwright? This you probably answer without going back to the passage. But if you do go back to the passage, it's directly given. William Shakespeare, often hailed as greatest playwright in the history of English language. Straightforward. Anyway, in the entire passage, this is the only author who actually wrote plays. Everybody else wrote novels. Which of Jane Austen's novel? What Jane Austen's novel? Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility. If you look at A, B, C, D, GK itself, you will know that Sense and Sensibility is written by Jane Austen. All others were written by others. So that's again straightforward. B. Who are the romantic poets mentioned? Again, very straightforward. William Wordsworth, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. It took me 2 seconds to find it. If you need to refer back, you may not even need to refer back, but if you do need to refer back, 2 minutes. 2 seconds. What is the title of Virginia Woolf's novel? Virginia Woolf's groundbreaking novel, Mrs. Dalloway. Done. You can also eliminate because you know the other novels by now. Identified 20th century novel mentioned in the passage, warning about dangers of totalitarianism. You probably pick it without even referring back. It's 1984. If you do go back, it's right there, second paragraph, last line. This is so easy to actually border on being ridiculous. What does the passage highlight? The enduring power of English literature. Okay. Now, if you look at it, its ability to captivate and inspire only British readers. So clearly, we're talking about the entire world being influenced by English literature. Decline of storytelling. C and D are obvious mistakes. Ability to win literary awards is really silly. Diversity of authors, themes, and styles. And then that's the straightforward pick that is left after you rule out A, C, and D. Okay. The last set is the only one which is a little tricky. Okay. This is the set where you spend a little more time. Right. The first 3 sets you can literally breeze through. So what does this set say? It talks about saying that the crisis of justice, which is being discussed today, and you talked about difference between the OECD countries, typically called the developed countries, and India. In the developed countries, the middle class has access to justice. In India, the middle class does not have access to justice. This middle class, which has emerged after 91, today is demanding access to justice. Why specifically middle class? Because when we talk about the poor people, they do not have access to justice even in the developed countries. Okay, a lot of that is evidence to support the claim. In the richest countries, the poorest people are the majority in jails. Okay, in India also, it's almost always the poor people who are to be found in the jails. Now, the justice system, they do not have access to them. Every person in the system seems to be somebody who will take advantage or exploit them. Right? The very concept of justice, which is very colonial or feudal, is alien to them. It is not designed for their needs and interests. And that's the example. Here he says, look, because they don't understand them, because they almost feel that these courts are not meant for us. Court jaoge to fasoge. They literally try their best to avoid court. Whatever possible way they try to, it's a last resort. They will not, on their own violation, go to court. If police catches them and drags them, they have no option. Right? That's what he says. A court is a place where you're taken by the police forcibly. No one goes to court on their own violation. Then the last paragraph basically says now each of these sections of society, the middle class and the poor, they look at justice differently. The example here, for example, if the law tries to stop the app-based taxi providers from kind of cornering the market, the app-based companies are big companies, funded companies with a lot of money. The middle class would say, no, we want the Uber, we want the Ola, because it is convenience for them. They call it ease of doing business. But the poor people will say, look, taxi is my source of livelihood. Let me run it through my system where I have a level playing field. I cannot compete with an Uber and Ola. And if I join up Uber and Ola, then I have to work according to their terms. Now, because there are differences in perception, there's a conflict as to what should justice be. And there are different demands. The poor demands a different type of justice. The rich and the middle class demand different forms of justice. Therefore, judicial reforms has mainly worked on the neutral areas where nobody can complain. That's the passage. This one requires a little bit of time and some care. So what is the central thesis? The central thesis is that justice has different meanings to different sections of society in India. Okay, not just India. But look at it. The practice of untouchability takes various forms in modern India, completely, except for untouchability used here more as an analogy, right? We are not discussing untouchability at all, completely out of scope. Okay. Addressing judge strength and caseload management, this is too narrow, too specific. While it's mentioned in the passage, it's definitely not the central idea. Protecting the livelihood, this is an example, and example cannot be the central idea. Therefore, it must be B, which is the concept of justice. The way people perceive justice is very different whether you are rich or poor. So the middle class, the rich, they talk about justice as, temple where, people get there. The courts are temples where you get justice and so on. The poor say, look, that's a place to be avoided at all costs. What does the author mean by docket excluded? This is slightly tricky here. It is given in the second paragraph. They, which is the poor people, the civil justice system is hardly accessible to them. They're often victimized by lawyers, touts, and court staff. They are docket excluded, a new type of untouchability. So even if you don't get the exact meaning, effectively what they are saying is that they do not have access to the justice system. Right? So option A seems correct. The poor do not have easy access to the justice system. Look at C and D. The poor reject the judicial system as being alien to their language and logic. Right? This is true as per the passage, but doesn't answer this question. Docket excluded is how the poor are excluded, not the poor doing the rejection. The rich are excluded from the country's presence, out of scope. We are talking about the poor being excluded from justice, not the rich. Right? So C and D eliminated. Between A and B, B specifically talks about bail petitions of poor under trial prisoners. right? This is a bit out of scope. We are not talking about specifically under trial prisoners. We are talking about any poor person does not have access to the justice system. Also, look at the example. It says the civil justice system is hardly accessible to them. So, since under trials really come under the criminal justice system, that's one more reason why you can eliminate it and take A as the answer for 2. Which of the first following words best describes the experience of different segments? This is very straightforward. Two completely different or divergent, therefore conflicting is the only answer that fits. Again, there's not even another choice which might tempt you into thinking for 30 seconds more. Right? Which of the following statements the author is most likely to agree with? This one probably requires a little bit of thinking, right? 9. The judicial system was made by the rich for the rich of the rich. This is an extreme statement, right? Nowhere, while the rich may benefit from having access to the system while the poor do not, we cannot say the judicial system was created by the rich for the rich and only the rich. So, very extreme statement, which we'll take out. If you take out C, then automatically, take out C. Judicial system reflects the same power relationship as those that exist in society. Now, if you look at it, the language and logic, colonial and feudal culture of the judicial system are alien to them, right? So the power relationships, the rich have certain power, right? The socially upper class as well as the rich people have certain powers, which the poor don't. And in society, the same powers, it is also reflected in the judicial system. So A can be interpreted. Now look at B. Access to the judicial system is determined more by a person's economic status, such as wealth and income. Till here, I have no problem. Than by their social status, such as religion and caste. Here, the second half goes out of scope. Religion and caste and its impact on access to justice is not mentioned anywhere. Therefore, I would eliminate B and I would go with A. And once you eliminate B, obviously none of the above also doesn't work. C we already held was extreme, so it must be A. Well, technically it's either A or none of the above, but I think A makes a lot of sense because they mention the colonial and feudal culture. So the same people who are powerful in economic domain, the same people who are powerful in social domain also have more power as far as access to the legal system. Which of the following statement the author is most likely to disagree with? A truly representative democracy would ensure that interests of poor are also represented in the judicial system. Forget the author, all of us will agree with it, right? Fairly straightforward. The law ensures equality both in text and practice. No, that's exactly what the author is saying, that while the law may theoretically be equal to everyone, in practice, clearly the poor do not have access. So author would disagree with B. The poor suffer most at the hands of lawyers and touts compared to judges who might still pronounce judgments in their favor from time to time. Now, if you say A is something that author would agree with, so A can be eliminated. He's not going to disagree with A. Therefore, all the above will also go, right? Therefore, between C, again, C is something that the author would agree with. B is the one that he disagrees with. What makes the reform of judicial administration a neutral area? This comes in the second half of the 4th paragraph. He says, although conflict over competing visions of nation and conflicting demands from social and economic segments. So the type of judicial system or type of judicial reform you want depends on which class you are from. The poor want a different type of reform and the middle classes want a different type of reform. And which is why, because of this conflict, the reform that has actually happened has happened in the non-controversial areas, which is the neutral areas. Right? So the reforms that have happened so far, they do not favor one class of people over the other. Again, while you may not find it easy to pick C, let us look at how to eliminate the options. Look at D. Reform of judicial administration is mandated by the Constitution. Where? Which part of the passage says that? So D is wrong. People across social economic strata agree on the need to reform the judicial system? Again, no. So far, what we know is that the poor simply try to avoid the judicial system. Right? Even if they agree, they don't agree how the reform should be done or what areas of reform, how the judicial system should be reshaped. Right? There is consensus among political parties across spectrum. Political parties have not really been mentioned at all. We only talked about the classes of people, the poor and the middle class and the rich. So B is eliminated. So we go with C. Right? So we are looking at those reforms which have happened. The reforms that have happened in the, for example, if you try to work on increasing the judge strength, neither the rich, middle class, or poor will object to it. If you try to effectively manage the workload of judiciary, judges, none of them can object to it. Right? So the processes and reforms which are neutral, which do not impact any one society section of society more or less, they are the areas where reform have actually happened so far, which is why we would go with C. So yes, a couple of mistakes, yes, anybody can make, but broadly, I don't think that one, you should have attempted all of them. Two, you should have taken not more than 20 minutes. I did probably, if you could have done it in 15, that would have been great, but not more than 20 minutes. So ideally saved at least 5 minutes for the other sections. And third, not made more than about, say, about 3 mistakes. So had you made 3 mistakes, you still probably would have got, something like 21.25. Right? So which is why we've made this made the analysis that a score of 20 plus is what you should get, especially if you're aiming for the top 3 NLUs. So that's it from my side. Thank you very much. And we will soon be followed by Siddharth, who will discuss the critical reasoning section. I'm sure there will be more to debate in that particular area compared to this one.